What's up everybody and welcome to the video. Today we're going to get started with Svelte. This is going to be the first video in a beginner series for Svelte. Let's get started by going over what it is. Svelte is a tool that builds very fast web applications. It has a lot of similarities to React and Angular, the other front-end frameworks. Therefore, you're going to have a lot of people that do call it a framework, but Svelte is actually a compiler for JavaScript. It will take your code and compile it down to really optimized, pure JavaScript that you ship to the browser. So that brings us into the differences from the other frameworks. React and Vue will use a virtual DOM that the browser compares to the real DOM, and through a diffing algorithm, it determines whether or not there's updates that need to be shown. Angular will use the real DOM all the time, and the browser has to refresh the entire tree on any change that's made. So what this does is this puts a lot of strain on the browser. When you're running ideal JavaScript through Svelte, it surgically updates the DOM, which allows apps to be significantly more performant, and reactivity is built into the language. There are a lot of reasons to use Svelte. It does create dynamic front-end applications, and by producing minimized JavaScript files and having more efficient updates to the DOM, it is shown to be much more performant than the other frameworks. It has a great growing ecosystem and community, and it has much simpler syntax when you compare it to, say, React, because it is using pure HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, whereas in React you're using JSX, and there's a lot of React-specific code that you have to implement. So here's a basic example of a Svelte component, which is a reusable, self-contained block of code that encapsulates HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and they all go into a Svelte file. And that's very important to notate because everything is contained within the component and scoped to the component, so you won't get any styling creep or anything like that throughout the global of the app, which sometimes can happen in the other frameworks. So in order to get started with Svelte, you do have a couple of different options. You can either go to svelte.dev and use the REPL. This would be really good if you just want to try out the language, see what it's capable of right in your browser. It doesn't involve you installing anything. For the first part of this tutorial, we're going to use Vite, which I'll show you in a second. That gives you a very basic Svelte application. It's useful if you don't need server-side rendering, a router, or any of the things that a full-fledged framework would give you. And of course, if you do need the full-fledged framework, you could always use SvelteKit, which does handle all of your server-side rendering, routing, stuff like that. We could definitely go over that in a later video. So in order to get started, we are going to be using Node.js and NPM to get Vite running on our computer. So just make sure that you do install Node. For the purposes of this video, I'm going to be using 18.15, the long-term service edition. So with your Node installed, we're going to go ahead and get this project started. So we'll change into the directory we want it in, and we'll npm init Vite. And what that'll do is that'll scaffold out your new project. And we'll just name it Svelte Demo. So this gives you a lot of different options. We'll head down to Svelte. It gives you the option of JavaScript, TypeScript, and SvelteKit. I'm going to use TypeScript. We'll get into that directory. We'll npm install. Now we'll get the project opened up in VS Code. And we'll start our dev server. npm run dev. Which will start your Vite dev server on localhost 5173. Vite is in charge of compiling all of your Svelte files down to the pure JavaScript files that we discussed. And if we go ahead and open this up in the browser, now that we have the app up and running, let's go ahead and take a look at the basic structure of the application. What I would recommend is installing the Svelte for VS Code extension. This will give you all the IntelliSense, and it just makes it a lot easier to work with. For your basic application that you're given, you have a main.ts file. If you've ever worked in React, this would be similar to your index.ts or index.js file. And if you chose the JS extension from the Vite kit, this will say main.js. Then you also have your app.svelte component. As you can see, it looks just like the component we went over in the first slides. This is going to be what you insert into your main.ts. So this is going to be the home component. And then they give you a little component as an example, counter.svelte, just to show you exactly how you could use it, import it, things like that. All right, so the first thing we'll do is we'll clean up the app.svelte file. So we'll delete out all the stuff that we don't need. And as you can see, as soon as we cleared that out, the browser did update. So the dev server does have auto reload. So first thing we'll do is we'll just do we'll declare a title. And then we'll just throw that into here. And as you can see, it comes right up. And then if we style it, we could just do H1. And these styles are scoped to the component. So if, for example, if I were to go into the counter and add a style tag and styled H1 as blue, as you can see, it doesn't change this, but if we add a H1 in here, save this, we'll import it into the app.svelte. And then just throw counter. So as you can see, inside of the counter button, you have a hello that is blue. So the styles are scoped to the component. They won't bleed into each other. So that's pretty much the basics of Svelte, of getting it installed, what it is, how it works. As you see, it's just basic HTML, JavaScript, and CSS, all built into little components. In the next video, we'll go ahead and start getting into more Svelte specific items, and I hope to see you there.